Hey guys, how are you? Today we're talking about the Honda S2000. A while back ago, I made a video about a car that I truly miss, and surprisingly, many people watched the video and commented on it. So now I know that I'm not alone in this sentiment of longing for a car era that brought us some cool and relatively affordable cars, the 90s and the early 2000s. Yeah, 1990 to let's say 2010. So what exactly is the Honda S2000? Well, if you look at Honda today, it's mostly CR-Vs, Civics, and sensible hybrids, but turn back the clock to the late 90s and Honda was a different animal. They were dominating Formula One as an engine supplier. In 1998, Honda was turning 50 years old. To celebrate, they didn't bake a cake. They decided to build a birthday present to themselves. They wanted a pure sports car that honored their heritage from the 1960s when they had roadsters like the S600 and the S800. The result launched in 1999 as a 2000 year model, hence the S2000. It was a rear-wheel drive, two-seat, no compromise sports car designed with one goal: driver engagement. Let's explore that segment today because sadly in the United States, the list of two-seater convertibles sold in 2026 is very short. And when you narrow it down to commodity brands offerings with a manual transmission, only one remains. Incredibly, only the Mazda Miata. And you cannot talk about the S2000 without starting with the engine. The internet taught me a lot about this car and I want to share it with you. The legendary F20C is a 2.0-liter naturally aspirated four-cylinder. It made 240 horsepower. That doesn't sound crazy today, but here's the context. That's 120 horsepower per liter on a car that weighed around 3,000 pounds. And I can only compare this one to the Mazda RX-8 of the 2003 to 2010, because that one was a 1.3 rotary engine that produced something like 190 to like 247 horsepower, which was a lot. So imagine the very small engine that produced a lot of horsepower. And when this car came out, that was the highest specific output of any naturally aspirated production car in the world. How did they do it? RPM. The red line on the early models was 9,000 RPM. Do you know how insane that is for a street car? To make an engine survive at 9,000 RPM for 200,000 miles like any Honda, they had to use space-grade materials and build tolerances so tight that it made German engineers jealous. The engine was designed to last a very long time, like any other Honda of that era. It revved like a supercar, but it did not require you to drop the engine for scheduled maintenance every 5,000 miles like a Ferrari. In typical Honda fashion, the engine was scutless below 6,000 RPM. To unleash the full potential, you had to floor it, which is when VTEC kicked in. I had the privilege of driving one. It was a first generation back in 2003, and it was quite an experience. I was never a fan of the digital cluster, and it didn't strike me as a potential daily driver for how raw, loud, and cramped it was, but we'll get to that later. But a great engine in a bad chassis is just a muscle car from the 70s. The S2000 was a scalpel. Honda didn't have a rear-wheel drive platform laying around, so they built a bespoke one. But as you hear this, please keep pen and paper ready and see how expensive a low-volume sports car can be. I don't know if they ever got their money back for this project. They created a high X-bone frame. The transmission tunnel is actually part of the main structural frame. The thing is so incredibly stiff even without a roof. They pushed the engine entirely behind the front axle for perfect 50-50 weight distribution. It's technically a front mid-engine car. And then there's the 6-speed manual transmission. The throws are short, the mechanical feel is metallic and precise. You never miss a gear. It is absolute perfection. Notice that by now I've mentioned a few things: two-seater, convertible, manual transmission, a normally aspirated four-cylinder. These are dying relics in today's market, but let's continue. There are two main versions. The AP1, which ran from 1999 to 2003, was the raw 9,000 RPM screamer, and the AP2, 2004 to 2009. It chilled out a little bit, and in North America, they bumped the engine to 2.2 liters, added a little torque, and lowered the red line to 8,000 RPM. They also tweaked the suspension. I mean, both are amazing, but to this day, there's still some that consider the first generation the better S2000, but I'll be happy with either one in my driveway. So if it was so amazing, why did Honda kill it in 2009? It was the perfect storm of bad timing. First, the global financial crisis of 2008 hit, and nobody was buying impractical two-seat convertibles. Sales fell off a cliff, and I honestly think that the segment never recovered from that. Second, emissions regulations were getting stricter globally. High-revving, naturally aspirated engines are dirty when they're screaming at redline. But mostly, Honda changed. Honda shifted their focus entirely to mass market efficiency, hybrids, and crossovers that share the same platforms. Platforms that can be scaled up or down depending on the next boring people mover they need to produce. The S2000 was a relic of a party that was over. Which brings us to the question everybody's asking today. Will Honda ever bring back the S2000? My guess is no. Look, I want it to happen, we all do, but we have to be realistic. If Honda makes a new S2000 today, it cannot be this car. You cannot build a 9,000 RPM naturally aspirated engine anymore. It's impossible under current regulations. We all know what happened when Honda brought back names like the Prelude or even the Acura Integra, which is nothing. These two cars only came back in name, but their spirit never resurrected. A new S2000 will have to be turbocharged, maybe have the engine that comes with the Civic Type R, or more likely a hybrid, but rear-wheel drive, good luck. Electric, well, if you make the S2000 that is heavy with batteries and doesn't make a noise and it shifts itself, is it still an S2000? The magic of this car was in its mechanical purity. You cannot digitize that soul. And to top it off, the market keeps moving away from anything that isn't a crossover or an SUV. So in the eyes of a current car buyer, the S2000 will be simply impractical. As car enthusiasts, we keep saying, bring this car back, but the sales numbers of these small niche vehicles keep shrinking to the point that the idea of this segment ever gaining momentum again belongs only in your dreams. The Honda S2000 is a time capsule and it represents the absolute peak of analog Japanese sports cars. And lastly, let's talk about value. When new, this car sold for around $32,000, which adjusted to inflation is around $60,000, not cheap. In today's market, $60,000 creeping up to Corvette Z8 or maybe a BMW Z4 territory. But when you consider that the Z4 only sold a little over 1,000 units in 2025, you can clearly see that there's very little demand for this type of vehicles. Sports cars like the Supra came back, but now with German DNA, only to leave again. And the Nissan Z struggles for relevance, but at least still around today. And as far as the two-seater convertible, gone are the MR2, the TT, the Solstice, and the Sky. The MX-5 carries the weight of the shrinking segment, but only about 22% of these sales are optioned with a manual transmission. I see S2000s for sale today and in good shape. They want an arm and a leg, but I honestly think that they're worth every penny. I will cross-shop these cars with maybe a Porsche Cayman or a Boxster, but the S2000 is much more reliable and cheaper to maintain. Thank you for watching. I cannot believe that you're still around. And if you're an S2000 owner, maybe a first generation or second generation, tell me which one is your favorite. And drop me a comment below if you're still crossing your fingers about the S2000 making a comeback. I recently watched a video from Savage Geese, which they hinted, in a humorous way, of course, that the Honda Prelude that came out could be literally the prelude to bringing back the S2000, which gave me the idea to make this video, but I seriously doubt it will ever make a comeback.
It's in the name. Prelude means something else is coming.
Fair, okay, yeah.
I think, and I'm calling my shot now, the S2000 is coming back.
And if a new S2000 means that Honda will bring back the name similar to how they resurrected the Prelude or the Integra from the ashes, the S2000 nameplate is better left alone in Jesterland for good. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.